Kentucky basketball needs to find a way to rebound offensively after that matchup against UNC Wilmington. Unfortunately, Penn is not the slouch that their KenPom rating indicates.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. All right, before we get into our preview of Kentucky basketball versus Penn, first of all, thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. If you're not subscribed on either YouTube or podcast, please go ahead and do so. A quick note to anybody out there watching this one, I am going to be out of town this week that Kentucky is playing Penn. As of this recording, Kentucky is down at halftime to UNC Wilmington. Obviously, a very bad first half for the Kentucky Wildcats. Easily, I think, the worst I've seen this season. Whether or not they're able to pull this one out will be interesting to see here throughout halftime. So I don't know the final score of this game. I don't know if Kentucky wins this one. I don't know if UNC Wilmington continues to shoot insane numbers relative to their percentages on the season, and they're able to kind of ride this one out and control the victory. They've led the entire way here since the beginning of the first half. So I don't know if Kentucky wins or loses, but I'm going to preview this Penn game regardless, because I think that this game against UNC Wilmington, win or lose, is something that we saw already earlier this year against St. Joe's. Kentucky basketball thankfully able to get things right on the offensive end of the floor today against UNC Wilmington. They looked awful in the first half offensively. It's the worst I've seen them. They were shooting really poor. The movement was awful. The decision-making was even worse. It reminds me of my first season doing this show. When Kentucky went on the road, it might have been their first SEC game. It might have been their first conference game of the season. They go and play LSU, and LSU's defense just harassed them the entire night. I think Severe Wheeler got hurt. It was an awful game offensively. Kentucky rushed everything, and that's what they're doing today against UNC Wilmington. They are rushing everything. They have to be able to rebound offensively. We'll talk about that later on in the show, about how Kentucky can calm themselves down, because win or lose, this is a game where you develop maturity. That's what you did against St. Joe's, against UNC Wilmington, same thing. And against Penn, I think it's also something similar, because you look at the Penn Quakers, we're going to talk about them first. We talked about their record and what they've done so far this season on a previous episode earlier this week. Look at who they've lost to. St. Joe's, Kentucky's already beaten them. Maryland Eastern Shore, they lost by 3 in overtime to that team, and then they lost to Belmont in overtime. But Belmont is not that great. The teams they've beaten: John Jay, who is not even a Division I team; Bucknell, they beat Villanova by 4 at home, Lafayette by 2, and Monmouth 76-61 at home. They beat Villanova by 4. And how, you may ask, did they do that? Well, you go and look at the box score in that game, and it was not necessarily a crazy day, but it was an efficient shooting night. You look at their numbers overall: 56.7% from the floor. They shot 7 of 17 from beyond the arc. That's 41%. And then you look at Villanova, poor shooting numbers: 27% from beyond the arc, 43% from the floor. This is how Kentucky can lose today against UNCM, and they can lose against Penn. It is slow, methodical, well-run sets that end up with clutch shots being hit. That's what happened in the first half against UNCM, and it's what could happen against the Quakers here. They are not a good offensive team. They are slightly above average. They are also incredibly slow. So the fact that they are this somewhat efficient, their top 100 in effective field goal percentage, is impressive considering their pace of play. Their adjusted tempo is 310 nationally. Their average possession length is 321st. They do not like to dial up a lot of quick offense. They do not like to get out and run. And when you watch these guys play, you can watch, I think a great game you can go back and watch from a season ago is Colgate, where their current leading scorer dropped 33 points, had some really interesting offensive sets, it got all sorts of screens going on to kind of move different guys around and get these guys, get their best three-point shooters open. Jordan Dingle was a really good player on this team a season ago. All of them facilitated. All of them found different guys making their outside shots. If this team does get hot in the first half, it can prove to be a problem against the Wildcats. They are currently 72nd nationally in three-point percentage. They shoot 36.5% from deep. They've got three that shoot very well. Outside of that, the roster is kind of iffy. So when you look at these three players, you're going to have to find a way defensively in your backcourt to shut them down. The first one is Clark, and I'm going to spell his name before I pronounce it. Slajchert. I believe the play-by-play announcer was saying Slatchert is how he was pronouncing his name in the different highlight videos that I watched. So I'm going to go with Slatchert is how you pronounce this kid's name, even though there is a random J in there. He is currently averaging 18 points while shooting 37% from 37.5% from deep. Tyler Perkins, the other guard that is scoring really high for them, 16.3 points, also averages 7 rebounds a game and 2 steals as Tyler Perkins. I would argue that he is the better overall player because of what he can do, rebounding and assisting and stealing as well. 37.5%. They're also both really good free throw shooters. They're pretty much the only two guys that can shoot free throws on this team. And then you have Sam Brown, who is another guard for them that shoots 50% from the floor. So you've got 3 different players, and he averages 12. So you've got 3 different players that can knock down shots in this slow, methodical offense. It's not the tallest team. They're also really bad on defense as well. So I'm focusing more on offense here because they don't create turnovers. They turn the ball over themselves. They are slow. They're not tall. They don't play well at the rim at all, which is probably where Kentucky's going to have their bread and butter in this one. But it's that offense, man. It's the three-point shooting that could absolutely kill you in this one, especially in the first half, if you don't get things going. So what does Kentucky do themselves? How do they attack this matchup? Well, I want to dive into that in just a minute. By the way, guys, if you are listening to this, whether it be on podcast or on YouTube, I want to remind you guys, if you've not subbed already, this is still going to be, I'm talking about this UNC Wilmington game, or who knows, Kentucky could come back and win this one. They could definitely come out in the first half and just blitzkrieg UNC dub and then take this game. They could definitely beat the Seahawks. They are entering a stretch here where there's a lot of growing up that they have to do. There's a lot of growing up. And you got to be able to settle down on offense. How does Kentucky do that? How do they handle the Quakers in this one? We're going to talk about it in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. As the weather continues to get colder here, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. That is FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, continuing along here on what should be hypothetically the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. If you have not subscribed to Locked On Kentucky on YouTube or on podcast, please go ahead and do so. Join the club. A lot of you guys have been subscribing as of late at the end of November on both podcasts and on YouTube. I appreciate everybody that has been joining. Join up. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun season. So we talked about the Penn Quakers. Slow, excellent three-point shooters. Not much else to talk about outside of that. They're not tall. They lack rim protection, and they've got 3 scores, and that's pretty much it. They average almost 80 a game, but it's those 3 guys that pretty much carry the load for them. How does Kentucky attack this? How do the Wildcats attack this Penn defense? First and foremost, like I said, hey, look, they give up 52% at the rim, or 52% from inside the arc. You run downhill, and you get looks at the rim. You figure out in this dribble drive John Welch offense how you can create looks downhill, and if you need to get to the foul line, so be it. If they put you on the foul line, knock down your free throws. But I think it's very straightforward how Kentucky can win this game. You have to take guys like Wagner if he's healthy, Rob Dillingham, Antonio Reeves, Justin Edwards, Reed Shepherd, and you need to take this entire roster and find different ways to get all these guys looks at the rim. I'm not saying that this is an Adou Thiero flex game, but he seems like the perfect type of player to take advantage of matchups here. He seems like the guy to get early touches in this one, as he has in games past, and just Kentucky draws things up for him, and he gets looks at the rim, and he finishes. I think Dillingham, who's become a more physical player. Wagner, if he's healthy, could be really good here. Edwards has proven at different points that he can be solid finishing at the rim if he actually gets all the way to the rim instead of pulling up for floaters. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Aaron Bradshaw, I think, is somebody that can work well off of this, because if you have a really solid ball handler like Wagner or Dillingham or even Shepherd, you can or Edwards even, heck, you can find opportunities to dish things off for dunks, because I think Bradshaw's probably going to play the dunker spot better than just about anybody on this team, because that's just kind of what he feels like he plays well. So getting downhill, getting to the rim, it's scoring there. I think that's where Kentucky's probably going to find most of their success. It should be noted that most of Penn's opponents have not shot well from three. I would probably argue that is simply because most of their opponents have not shot well from deep. Also, just want to point out that today, I'm recording this on December 2nd, Villanova lost to Drexel. A moment of silence for the Wildcats. You have now lost to Penn, St. Joseph's, and Drexel, and you have somehow beaten Maryland, Texas Tech, North Carolina, and Memphis, sandwiched in between that. What on earth are the Villanova Wildcats? I don't know. I'd like to... I was about to say I'd like to play them in the postseason. No, I wouldn't actually. I don't think I would. Continuing along though, Penn and their 3-point shooting offense, their slow 3-point shooting offense. How do you attack that on the other end? I think Kentucky's got to do a better job of what they didn't do against UNC Wilmington in the first half. You've got to be able to fight through screens and contest shots. This is something that bothered me against Miami in the first half, and this is something that's bothered me in the first half against the Seahawks. Kentucky does not contest threes consistently. They don't put their hand up. They expect a drive to come. They expect the player to catch the ball and to drive it. They expect either that or the ball handler who is backing them down to that 3-point line or pulling it back out to the 3-point line. They are expecting that ball handler to drive it again. Why? I don't know. Maybe defensively, Kentucky's coaching staff is teaching this team to be a little bit more careful because of the lack of height and rim protection they have. I don't know. But I think that Kentucky's got to contest shots better. They've got to be more aggressive. They've got to be more aggressive on that end of the floor. So I think it's pretty simple. Right now, Kentucky has to attack the basket and be aggressive. You have to defend the 3-point line and be aggressive in doing that. Against Miami, one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the nation, Kentucky did not contest as often as they should have. In the second half, they were better, but they didn't do it then. They're going to really need to do it as well here against Penn, because Penn has proven that they can take out a decent team in Villanova. They can take out a better team in Villanova. UNC Wilmington is proving that they can also do that as well. We're going into the second half right now. UNC Wilmington leads by 1 now, and they're shooting 37.5%. That's what the two best shooters for Penn shoot. You've got to be able to find the energy and execute. And this is something that Kentucky, I think, struggled with a little bit against a team like St. Peter's a couple of years ago. But they don't struggle consistently against like their conference opponents, where it's like you get up, you realize how big of a game it is, and you take your talent and your energy and you execute. In spots like this against the Seahawks, in spots like this against the Quakers, you've got to do a better job of getting up and getting ready. So that's where we stand with Kentucky versus Penn. And right now, it's going to be interesting to see how Kentucky figures things out against the Seahawks. Again, I don't know if they will. But this is a really interesting, it's become an interesting turning point for Kentucky basketball for the future of their non-con slate. Because we previewed the final four or five games in the non-con slate like a couple of episodes ago. You beat Miami, and that's awesome that you beat them the way you did. You beat Marshall, and you scored 118 points in the process. It's awesome that you did that the way that you did. You lost to Kansas, close. At least you battled in that one. But hey, you've got North Carolina. And then a few weeks after that, you've got Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State to start things off. One of those teams is not performing as well as we had expected them to. The other three are good. And two of those games are on the road. You have to mature. These 4 games, Seahawks, Quakers, Tar Heels, Cardinals, and then Illinois State, I think, are the Red Hawks or the Red Birds. You got to be able to take these 4 games after the UNC dub, and you got to be able to mature a little bit. You can't sleepwalk waddling into SEC play. Aaron Bradshaw, from what I've seen, may take a little time to adjust. The team may take a little time to adjust to him. There was a listener that asked a question about this recently about could this possibly be a chemistry issue. I don't think it's a chemistry issue. I don't think that Wagner getting hurt is going to hurt this team offensively. We're just seeing Kentucky sleepwalk on offense against UNC dub right now. I think this team will mature. I don't think there's a chemistry issue. I think they just need to wake up. So that's my take on Kentucky versus Penn. That's my take on how they need to approach things defensively, because this team, I think, can be better defensively. They just got to be more aggressive. They got to be more committed. So if you've got any thoughts on that, you can absolutely leave it in the YouTube comments below, or you can hit me on the socials. I will be back to recap this episode, or recap this game against Penn. So if you've got any thoughts on before, after, whenever, you can absolutely leave it in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all for a recap episode of Kentucky versus Penn. Until then, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.